presenting you highlights of the previous 4 years, starting from the 2017 till 2020, and then I will be comparing Android versus other mobile operating systems, and then I will be focusing on Android and what are the threats, what are the attacks, and on these smartphones which are having Android-based operating system, and why in today's era this smartphone is being used as a target. Then we will dig deep into Android. Then we will see what are the security issues related with Android. Then we are going to see the platform architecture of Android. Then we are going to jump to security architecture. This is important in understanding how the security of Android works and how the malware analysis hence could take place. Then we'll dig deep to architectural vulnerabilities, then software vulnerabilities, then what are the advanced threats in today's scenario uh, towards the Android-based operating system and the Android-based system. And next, we are jumping to what malware analysis is and how it is done in Android-based system, and what are the three different kinds of malware analysis that we can perform on Android-based system and how to do that. So this is the content, or you can say layout for today's expert today's. So next, I'm jumping to the first slide here. So this first slide is very basic in nature, just only introducing you to what malware is. So as everybody might be knowing, malware is any kind of hostile or intrusive or annoying software or program code that is designed to use a device without user's consent. So what these malicious program does, they can perform a variety of functions like they steal, they encrypt your data, they encrypt your sensitive data, they may alter your sensitive data, they may even hijack your computer and perform some computation without your consent. So these are the things that are done by malicious software or malwares. So there are categories of malwares, or malwares could be categorized into various types depending upon how it functions. Where they could be viruses, they could be worms, they could be trojans, they could be rootkits, they could be ransomwares, they could be keyloggers, they could be greywares. Like in greyware also they could be adware and spyware. So let us now briefly see each of the category of malware. So it will be helpful to us in framing the basic understanding regarding malicious software, malicious program. So first, I'm starting with viruses. So what is a virus? A virus is a piece of code which is capable of copying itself and typically has a detrimental effect. Means it has a degrading effect on your system. Like it may corrupt the system or it may destroy the data. Then comes worms. So what are worms? A computer worm is a standalone malware. Means it is a computer program or it is a malicious computer program that replicates itself in order to spread to other computers. Means this computer on the computer in which it is being installed, it damages that computer also, but also get transferred to other computers which are aligned with that computer to the network or any other interface. So it uses a computer network generally to spread itself, relying on the security failures on the target system to access it, and worms almost always cause at least some harm to the network. They even consume your bandwidth, so that is also harm. Now next, we jump to Trojan. So what are these Trojans? So Trojan is any malicious computer program which misleads user of its true intent. Means this program is basically having hidden quality. It doesn't show its true intent. It hides its true intent. A Trojan is a malicious program that misinterprets itself to appear useful. It means it gives an appealing effect to the end user that it is a useful program, but at the end it is a malicious program. So they spread in the guise in the disguise, like they spread like they are a routine software, and persuade a victim to install on their PC or mobile phones. Now next comes rootkits. So what is a rootkit? It's a collection of software specifically designed to prevent malware and gather information in your system. So these work in the background so that the user may not notice anything suspicious is happening on their computer. So, but in this background, they could be very dangerous. Like a rootkit will permit several types of malware to get into a system. It means it opens a window for other kinds of malware to get into a system, and these software work like a backdoor for malware to enter, and are now being extensively used. Means these days these kind of rootkits are extensively used by hackers to infect the system. So a rootkit installation can either be automatic or an attacker can install it once they have obtained the administrative privileges of your system. Now next comes ransomware. So it is also a very popular kind of malware these days. So what it does, this type of malware basically infects the system from inside. It locks your system and makes it useful. Makes it useless. So it it may encrypt your files or lock your computer so that you could not be able to use your resources. And in order to decrypt your files or leave your system, they basically demand some ransom in return. So next is keyloggers. So keylogger is a special kind of malicious software that records all the information that is typed by the keyboard. So keyloggers usually are not capable of recording the virtual keyboard, but they are capable of capturing the physical keyboards. So if you are using, and generally we use physical keyboard more than the case with virtual keyboards. So it means these keyloggers can have a very bad impact. They may steal your username and passwords and card credentials while you are typing from a physical keyboard. So next is, so what is a grayware? So it is used to describe unwanted applications and files that are not classified as malware and can worsen the performance of the computer and lead to security risk. So there are two types of graywares, adwares and spywares. Adwares, they pop up some annoying ads and you get annoyed with those kind of ads, and they simultaneously also want you to click those ads and to generate revenue from those by clicking your ads. Another type is spywares. Spywares are the special kind of graywares in which they try to steal, or they try to you can say pass on privacy information of yours to some other user. So these are the categories of malwares, major categories of malwares. Now we will jump to other slides. The highlight of 2017. So this highlight is basically extracted from csoonline.com. So this csoonline.com is a top website, or you can say it is a site maintained by an enterprise of security decision makers and users with the critical information, and it is from the month of August 2017. And what is the report says? This says 5 new threat to your mobile security. So what they want to say in this report is that cyber criminals are stepping up their attacks on mobile devices with new weapons and variation on old ones. So they want to basically draw your attention towards the impact and how the attackers are being stepping towards mobile devices and how your mobile is under a threat. So what are the 5 threats they listed? So those 5 threats were persistent enterprise class spyware. Then next threat was mobile botnets. Third was ad and click fraud. Fourth was IoT based malwares, Internet of Things malwares, and fifth is dead apps. So let us discuss each of them in brief. So what is persistent enterprise class spyware? So generally in an organization, employee use their mobiles, and they tend to use their mobile devices in nearly every aspect of their lives is attached with mobile, and mobile is at always an arm's length to an individual. So With such close proximity to corporate networks, network access, voice activation, GPS tracking, state actors are looking at the ways to infect mobiles with spywares. So this tactic has been successful with both iOS as well as Android devices, which are the two most popular operating systems if we are talking in the realm of mobile devices. Now, next is mobile botnets. So, what is a botnet? You already know. So, what is a mobile botnet? New malware can quickly turn your mobile devices into botnets that is controlled by a hacker without the knowledge of the owner. So, the first mobile botnet that targeted Android devices was named as Viking Code. So, what were the characteristics of that Viking Code botnet? So any rooted or non-rooted device that uses proxied IP address to disguise ad clicks, generating revenues from for the attackers. So these were the main things by the botnets done these days in respect of mobile phones or mobile devices. Now next comes ad and click fraud. So ad and click fraud in mobile devices is a growing concern these days. How it is a growing concern that many of the attackers try to gain access of your mobile devices by phishing attack from SMS or emails, and they try to basically trick you into clicking some ads and then get revenue generated from it. Now, next is IoT based malwares. So, this IoT based malware is still in its infancy, still it is growing, but it hasn't stopped malware authors from jumping into this realm. So, this is also a growing area of malware attacks. Now, next is dead apps. So, dead app is a special kind of app. Generally, we tend to download some application on our mobile from either Google or Apple store. So when we download the application, so apart from doing what the ad description of those apps tells us, they may do some malicious activity. And later on, when Google and Apple store came to know that such kind of app is doing such kind of activity, they try to you can say eliminate those apps from their stores. But what happens is the end user which have already downloaded the apps are not able to know that these basically apps are doing some malicious activity, so they tend to use those apps, so and tend to lose their privacy data or may lose some important information from their mobiles. So these are the 5 important threats as of 2017 by this website. Coming to 2018, so I'm picking here two websites. One is CNET and other is Kaspersky Security Summit in Mexico. So first I will discuss CNET report. So the CNET report of March 2018 says your smartphones are getting more vulnerable for hackers. So it means security researchers, it tries to say that security researchers are seeing a shift where attackers would much rather hit your smartphone than your computer. Means your smartphone are at much more risk than your computers, according to this report. Now, next is the extract from the Kaspersky Security Summit, which was held in Mexico. So in the same year, so what there were various findings in that report, but one of the major finding was regarding a malware which was known as Dark Caracal. So what is this malware? It in short, it is defined as a global malware campaign which is targeting the mobile devices that have already infected thousands of people in more than 20 countries. So let us know more about this Dark Caracal. So what this Dark Caracal does? It was tracked later on tracked to a building, to a Lebanese General Security Directorate, and it used nearly identical weapons of real apps, identical versions of real apps, and tricked thousands of people to install it. Means it used versions of real app, but it was malicious in nature, and it allowed the attackers to take photos to find the location and to record audio, to spread disguising. These were the main functionalities of the malicious attacks behind this dark caracal, and it was using the name of messaging, popular messaging apps such as Signal and WhatsApp. Regarding the highlight of 2018, now next we should jump to highlight of 2019. So here I'm quoting McAfee Mobile Threat Report, March 2019. So what this report said, mobile malware continues to increase in complexity and scope. So it clearly means that mobile malware is increasing in complexity as well as scope. So what it highlighted? It highlighted that the mobile platform is an increasing target for nation state to observe key individual. Means if a nation state or if a nation's government want to keep track of an individual, they are taking use of these malicious apps to track some individual activity. So threat actors against mobile platforms are broader groups than those simply looking to boost ad revenues. Means now the threat actors, the attackers are basically not simple revenue generators. They are basically more complex and more organization and bigger organization targeting a key individual depending upon their organization interest. This is the outcome from highlight of 2019. Now I will discuss some more points from this highlight of 2019. So in this McAfee mobile report, they focus basically how cyber criminals are constantly turning Android devices into mobile backdoors, which potentially allows covert access to internal home and corporate networks and use nearly identical version of real apps and trick thousands of people to install it. So this was the main crux behind McAfee threat report. So one of the example they gave regarding fake app, which is a general malware, you can say general purpose malware family that mimics, you can say popular apps. So the silent characteristics of this malware family is app from unknown sources is enabled through these kinds of apps, which looks like real apps, allowing admin access or other privileges, which are very serious in nature. Because if you are giving some admin access to some app, so it means you are giving whole of your security concern to what to a unknown user. So next is uh, another silent feature was they try to generate revenue through ads and redirect to download other apps. So this is also very annoying. And they also sent some SMSs and downloaded hidden apps or display annoying ads. Next is banking Trojan. So this was another kind of, you can say, uh, mobile malware famous these days. So the main intention of these malware families is to steal banking and other financial credential of yours. So how they function? They function by dynamically downloading and decrypting malicious code after a time period. Means for the particular time period they try to project themselves as fair apps, but at the end of certain time period they try to download the malicious code. Initially that malicious code is not with the apps, so later on they download it and generate revenue through ads and redirect to downloads other app. So they can also add key logging. As I've already told you, key logging and spyware. They try to spy your keyboard, what you are typing and what you are seeing, all these stuffs. So next is crypto mining. So this is another class of, you can say, malicious family. So this is a new and popular class of malicious families these days. So everybody knows what is crypto mining from blockchain. Everybody might have, you can say, heard this blockchain word somewhere and sometime in their career these days, because all of us are from the computer fraternity and we know what blockchain is. So and the basic functioning behind blockchain is crypto mining. One of the application of blockchain is crypto mining, you can see. So these malicious code inside the apps which portray as a real app is having blockchain entries to cryptocurrencies. So they can use what they can jump from phone to a smart TV to infect your entire environment. and some apps like ADB Miner, which is a kind of crypto mining app, are spreading through ADB, which is known as Android Debug Bridge, which is used to debug your Android application. When you're developing Android application, that ADB is used to basically debug your application. So, and it is being spreaded through that very authentic app, and it can even put excessive strain on the device since your all the computation is being used by those kind of crypto mining apps. So next, one more popular, you can say, type of families these days are spywares. They are targeted attacks on mobile devices, as we've already seen what a spyware is, and they are used to store photos and other sensitive data to create fake accounts online, uh, fake accounts on online services, and can steal SMS messages, contacts, GPS details, and audio recordings, and can steal user find identities. So IoT attacks. So what are these IoT attacks? Uh, when we are having malicious code inside our IoT applications, then IoT attack take place, and they basically those malicious attack basically took advantage of the vulnerabilities in IoT devices being exploited, and they access the stream or microphone or the voice assistant to spy or perform action. They use IoT device to access the rest of the network. So that is also threatening, because you have already you might be knowing that most of the IoT application are basically being incorporated these days in healthcare. So when we are having such kind of attacks in our healthcare industry, so that is also vulnerable to us, very vulnerable to us, very threatening. So next is the highlight of 2020, that is the current year. So I have uh, taken the source from Kaspersky Resource Center, and this report is published in March 2000 in 2020. And what was the headline of this report? The report says the top 7 mobile security threats in 2020. So we will discuss these threats. What are the top 20 threats according to this report? But before that, it also said one thing, that over 280,000 malware files per day were detected, and many of which targeted mobile devices. Right. So these many number of malware files per day are coming, and these very files are targeting mobile devices. So that is very alarming. So what are the highlights? So as we have seen, this report highlighted 7 new threats to the mobile device security. So what are these threats? Data leaks, unsecured Wi-Fi, network spoofing, phishing attack, spyware, broken cryptocurrency, improper session handling. Now let us discuss each of them one by one. So first, data leaks. So what is data leak? So mobile apps basically are the cause of unintentional data leak. For example, riskware apps, they pose a real problem for mobile users, as those kind of user may grant them broad permissions but don't always check security. Means without checking the security concerns, we generally try to grant permission to our apps. So these are typically free apps found in official app store. Basically, they are free nature and they are found in official app store like and Apple. They have their official app store, and uh, that uh, that perform as advertised as in the app description. Means the thing that is advertised by the apps is also performed, but apart from it, they also send personal and potentially corporate data to a remote server. So hence data leak occurs in these kinds of apps. So this is a security concern. So next is unsecured Wi-Fi. So generally it is our habit, when we are at some public place, we try to use Wi-Fi there. So because generally the Wi-Fi seems to be free there, but using that free Wi-Fi could lead us into a risk. How it can lead us into a risk? Because it may steal our personal banking or credit card information, as the Wi-Fi being used may not be safe. Now next is network spoofing. So what is network spoofing? So it is when hackers set up fake access points. It is similar in line with unsecured Wi-Fi, like the connections that look like Wi-Fi networks but are actually traps in high traffic public places like shops, or sorry, coffee shops, libraries, and airports, etc. So what cyber criminal does? Cyber criminal give the access points common name like free airport Wi-Fi or coffee house, like this. They give these kind of names, and in some cases, attackers require user to create an account there. And generally, it is a habit of ours that we try to give the same, you can say, username and password which we are using for accessing emails or other confidential social media accounts. So we try to give the same password and same username there also, because we don't want to remember new usernames and new passwords. So they may manipulate those username and password and can hack your personal accounts on social media, or mail accounts. So this is a new kind of these days. Okay. Okay. I'm being told that some of you have already started asking some queries. Mobile phone cloning is another way of hacking. Yes, mobile phone cloning is another way of hacking, and you have to turn off your location. Yes, it is a very good approach. We have to turn off our location, and how to avoid mobile phone surveillance, and how to identify if your cell is under surveillance. So that we will come to, that how to do that. But that is a very tricky part, that is basically involving lot of analysis, and that analysis is basically maybe of different types, and you may be a expert in those kind of techniques. So as I have already shown you the content at the starting of the content, I have shown you there could be a static type of analysis, a hybrid type of analysis, or you can say one of the analysis is dynamic analysis. So under dynamic analysis, we are going to discuss that analysis. Under dynamic analysis, we are going to have network monitoring. From those network monitors, we can see that there is some malicious activity, or we are under surveillance or not. These kind of things could be done. Okay. Okay, so one is asking, may I know if there's hands-on experience like implementation of cybersecurity in Python platform? Okay, so Python is not used generally. So what is used, because Android, I'm basically focusing on, you can say, Android here, and Android programming is done in Java. But how Python could be used? Python could be used to analyze the apps that we will see. I will tell you that also. So I think these are the queries up till now. Now, if it's Android, can I use Kotlin? Yes, you can use Kotlin. Kotlin is basically also being used to develop mobile apps now these days, apart from Java. Which network monitoring tool easily available in market? So there are a lot network tools like Wireshark. You can say Wireshark is uh, used in terms of, you can say, mobile scenarios. Um, uh, there is T packet capture, which is an application that could be installed on your mobile devices, and that could be used. So I think these are the question regarding implementation and how analysis could be done. So that could be taken in depth at the later part of this presentation. So let me continue with the introduction also, and finish and streamline the process, and we'll go to that part also. So what I was discussing was you next what I was discussing was phishing attack. Uh, so phishing attack. So it is a very common and old version of attack. You might be knowing that there are certain links which are embedded in our emails, and we are, you can say, we are forced to, or we are given some uh, notion that this mail is not malicious, and we try to open that mail and we click on that link, and after clicking the link, what happens, our personal information got surrendered to some unknown, or you can say remote attacker. So how it is being done in terms of mobile scenarios, or how it is in terms of mobile device security, as we have seen that always we are signed in from our email accounts when we are using our mobile, and our mobile is always at an arm's length from us. So what happens, so as soon as a mail comes, we try to open that mail, and knowingly or unknowingly, what we does is we open a mail which is having a phishing attack, and we are compromised. So next is spyware. So spyware already discussed, so I don't think that it needs to be discussed again. Now, broken cryptocurrency. So what is broken cryptocurrency? When app developers use weak encryption algorithms, or they fail to cryptography, not cryptocurrency. I'm reading. I'm not reading correctly. Broken cryptography. So broken cryptography can happen when an app developer use weak encryption algorithm or fail to properly implement strong encryption. In the first case, developer may use familiar encryption algorithm. Means in the case in which they are using weak encryption, they are using developer may be using familiar encryption algorithm, and despite their known vulnerabilities, to speed up the app development process. Means developer knows that this is vulnerable, this algorithm is vulnerable, but since it is easy and this is fast, so the developer is using that kind of algorithm, and as a result, any motivated attacker who knows about that vulnerability can exploit the vulnerability and can crack your password and gain access. In the second case that I have told, that is we are using highly secure algorithm, but somewhere we are giving a backdoor. Means we are not implementing that algorithm effectively. So again, the vulnerability could be used by this attacker, and our passwords could be cracked. So next is improper session handling. So this is also a serious problem these days. So suppose we are using an application, and using this application we have logged in to something there on the server of some central server somewhere, and what we does is instead of closing that session, we are using second other apps. So what other, if those other apps are malicious in nature, they try to access the open session by some legitimate app and could hamper my privacy. So these are the security highlights of 2020. So next is we are building, or we have seen a consensus there from 2017 till 2020 that smartphones, or you can say mobile devices, are becoming target these days. So what are the reasons behind it? So there could be few, there could be many reasons, but few of the reasons that I have listed here is technology improvement, like greater memory. Greater memory we are having, and we are having uh, greater processing power in our mobile devices, greater speed like 4G. If you remember, if you segregate the era of 2010 to 2020 and before that, you will came to you will be you already have experienced that from 2010 or 2009, you could say. After introduction of these smartphones, we have greater memory, greater processing power, and greater speed like 4G these days. Is a technology improvement which by which we are treating our mobile phone as a supercomputer these days, and that's a supercomputer is in our hand. So instead of using our traditional PCs, we are more dependent towards our mobile phone and using our mobile phone for day-to-day activities. So that is why this technology improvement are basically leading us our smartphones towards as a target. So sheer volume, as we have seen, that number of smartphones have increased, and they have even increased in great proportion to the PCs. Now, in a common house, you could imagine that they might not be having a PC, but they might be having 4 to 5 mobile phones in their house. So next is user activity. Since they are handy in nature, so every time we are using them, so a lot of user activity is there. So valuable data, so as we rely more and more on mobile phones, so we store far personal information on them, and uh, that so we are not limiting just to our context, but social media platform that they use. So we store passwords for our apps, family photos, business email, and lot more else beside. So another feature is always on. Means the traditional PC, when you are not using it, you switch it off. But you are using this, what you are doing in this context, these mobile phones are always on. You are not switching. Next is there is a comparison of Android OS with the other OS, and you can see that others please switch off. Okay. So most of the popular OS these days are Android, Windows, and Apple, and among them you can say Android is having 86.1% market share, and Apple is having 30.7% market share, and Windows is very least 0.3%, and rest of the market share is for rest of the mobile OSs. And you can see that since Android is having most of the market share, so most of the devices or the smart devices, or you can say the mobile devices targeted today, are basically intended toward Android OS. So next, you can see this is a data representing the number of attacks for the year 2019. You could see this is from Panda Media Center, and it is sorry, it is of up till 2018, and it is being reported in January 2009. So what it reports, around devices, Android devices 50 times more compared to iOS. So this is the trend you can see. So that is why focusing on Android is important. So next is uh, why Android. Again, we are digging deep why we need Android. Uh, so one of the reason is one of the prime contributing factor to this immense malware growth is Android's popularity. Means it is popular, as we have seen, it is open source. So there, and besides its popularity and its open source nature, so there is you can say third party markets app other than Google Play Store, which are available. Example, Aptoid, Galaxy apps, etc., which are not available for Apple because Apple try to block third party app. Now, while Google vets every app before that comes on Google Play with the help of Google Play Bouncer. It is software utility used by the Google Play Store to vet every app. Still, some malicious apps surpass that, and still malicious apps could be found on Google. So, so even if you are downloading your, you can say, application from Google Play Store, it is not 100% guaranteed that it is non-malicious, or you can say benign. So another Android devices that only downloads apps from Google Play are 9 times less likely to get a PHA. What is PHA? PHA is potentially harmful application. So Android devices that only downloads app from Google Play are 9 times less likely to get a PHA than device that download apps from other source. So this is a report from Google itself, which is basically, you can say, which is also the owner of this, or you can say developer of this Android OS. So what it says ki, if you are downloading an app from other third party app store other than Google Play, so it is having probability of download, it is having probability of malicious code. But if you're still downloading it from Google Play, it is 9 times less likely. So it indirectly means that again Google is pointing that still the malicious app could be downloaded from Google Play. So they are, Google Play is not safe also. So next is the threat capabilities of Android malware. So capability, one of the capabilities is disabling of the device. So it could disable your device. Or next is allowing a malicious actor to remotely control the device, and it track the user's activity, and they log the device. They encrypt or steal personal information from the stored from the information which is stored in the device. Financial assets are at risk, and personal and political reputation. Since your personal data is at leak, so your personal and political reputation is at risk. The threats posed by the Android malwares. Now, the types of attacks in Android malwares. Now, one of the attack is phishing attack. So, phishing attack, as we have already seen, user credential such as account details and credit card numbers are collected by the means of app, emails, or SMS, which seems to be genuine. Now, next is spyware. So, what is spyware? Spyware, as we have also seen spyware. User activity on smartphones are being monitored. They are basically used for monitoring users' activity, which means personal information is extracted or inferred. And if we compare to surveillance attack, the spyware does not have a specific target. They could target any of the system. So, but what is surveillance attack? They are intended for a specific user which is under surveillance. And what is a dialware attack? Users' money is stolen using the malware makes hidden calls to the premium numbers or SMS services. So by dialing some premium numbers and by sending some SMS to premium numbers, they try to steal your money. Now, some more attacks, financial malware attacks. So what is financial malware attack? So such attack aims to steal user credential from the smartphone or perform man-in-middle attack on financial application. When you are accessing your financial application, these kind of attacks try to steal your user credentials so that they could steal money from your wallets. And worm-based attacks, as we have seen, what is a worm? Worm replicates itself to other devices. So a worm is a malware that duplicates itself. Here it is written, typically propagating from one device to another using different means to an existing network without user intervention. And what are botnets? These are also attack. Botnet is a set of zombie devices that are infected by malware so that a hacker can remotely control them. Means control of your device it's towards your attacker. Now next are security issues with Android. So there are major 5 security issues that are listed here. So one is information leak. So it occurs when application user grant permission to application without any restriction from the Android OS. So then your application gets leaked. So privilege escalation. So in this case, what happens is escalation of privilege or permission because of kernel vulnerabilities. There are vulnerabilities in kernel. Due to that, the permission given by you to a particular app get escalates to a higher level of permission. So that is also a kind of security issue. Next is repackaging of app. It is very easy to unpack an Android app. An Android app could be unpacked with the help of a software which is freely available, known as APK tool. So you could easily unpack that any Android app and could append your code that could be malicious in nature. So that is known as repackaging of app. So next is denial of service attack. You know what is denial of service attack? Application may be designed to overload smartphone and restrict the user of other services. Means they try to consume your bandwidth. Now next is colluding attack. So that is very useful, very important, interesting kind of attack that we are also going to study later in this presentation. But for now I'm introducing you, but I'm giving a basic overview. So what is this? A colluding attack. It is an attack in which user deploy a group of applications having the same certificate and they grant various permissions that grant access to their resources and permission by taking advantage of the shared UID. Means somehow I will tell you how it is happening later in this presentation, but somehow different apps are using the same user ID, and due to that, those apps could share the permission assigned to those separately. The permission that are assigned to them separately could be shared by those apps and could be used by them. So this is a colluding attack, and now we are jumping to you can say Android platform architecture, because before knowing how we could analyze the attacks, so we should know the platform architecture of Android, how it is working. So you could see the different layers there: system app layer, Java API layer, native C or C++ library layer, Android runtime layer, hardware abstraction layer, Linux kernel layer. So these are the various layers in the Android platform architectural stack, you could say. So we will discuss each of the layer one by one. And first layer is Linux layer, Linux kernel layer. So what is this layer? This is the foundation of Android platform, and found this foundation is basically based on Linux kernel. Means Android operating system kernel is basically a Linux kernel, and the Android runtime, which is ART, relies on this Linux kernel for underlying functionalities such as threading and low-level memory management. Right. So all the low-level memory management task and all the threading operation, uh, for doing those kind of operation, ART relies on Linux kernel. So using a Linux kernel, what are the advantages of using a Linux kernel? As it allows Android to take advantage of key security issues, or you can say key security features, and allow device manufacturers to develop hardware drivers for well-known kernel. Now next is hardware abstraction layer. So what is this hardware abstraction layer? You could see here. So hardware abstraction layer is basically having set of libraries, you can say. So later on your Java API could call these libraries and could access these hardwares. As you can see, there various kind of hardwares are associated with our Android smartphones, audio, Bluetooth, camera, sensors, all these kind of hardwares. To access all these kind of hardware, we need their libraries or their modules, library modules, to access them. So all such modules are being assembled at this layer. So next is ART, Android runtime. So what is this? So for the devices uh, running Android version 5.0, means for the devices running Android version 5.0 or above, each app runs in its own process and with its own instance of ART. So ART is written to run multiple virtual machines. Means what it does? It tries to run multiple virtual machines for every application that is being uh, uh, executed in the current scenario. So on low memory devices, how it functions, since Android smartphone is a low memory device, so how it functions by executing the DEX files. So what are these DEX files? These DEX files are basically the bytecode equivalent of the Java file, because I have already told and it is already discussed. Somebody is saying ki sir please share the PPT. Okay, I will share the PPT after this course with the course coordinators, and they may be giving you this PPT. Okay, now next, what I was discussing, I was discussing Android runtime. So as this Android runtime, as of this Android runtime, I was saying that this is basically creating a virtual machine for each and every application that is being executed. And when this app, they are being executed, how they are executed, they are basically converting the DEX files. What are the DEX files? They're the bytecode equivalent of you can say your Java classes that are written to implement the application. So this is how ART functions. So next is very interesting thing, native C and C++ libraries. So again, I want to tell you that everything is not written in Java in you can say your Android application. Most of the code is written in Java, and some of the code is being used from C and C++ libraries. So, for example, if you want to do some 2D or 3D graphic drawing, so your Java OpenGL API calls OpenGL library of your C and C++ and executes all those functionalities to that library. Such kind of libraries which are written in C and C++ and available to the stack of Android platform are basically termed as native C and C++ library. Some of the libraries here mentioned are like WebKit, OpenMaxAL, Live, Media Framework, OpenGLES that I have already told you. So these are kinds of libraries. So next is you can say next layer is Java API framework layer. So what is this layer? The entire feature set of the Android OS is available to you through APIs. What are APIs? APIs are basically application programming interfaces, and they are basically written in Java language. These API form the building blocks you need to create Android apps. Basic functionality is written, and you are just using this basic functionality to create a more robust code from it. So these APIs form the building blocks I have already told you, and you need to create Android apps by simplifying the reuse of the core modular components and services which are available to you as a stack in Java API framework. So for example, view system, you can see here, this view system is an API which is available to you, which will enable you to create a UI for an app. With the help of this library, you could include lists, grids, text boxes, buttons, and even embedded web browsers. So these are the use of view system library. Now, one more library is like resource manager. So in that resource manager, you could provide access to known code resources such as localized strings, graphics, or layout files. Next is notification manager. So notification manager enables all apps to display custom alerts in the status bar. Like activity manager, there is one more manager known as activity manager. With the help of this activity manager, here it is written, here it is shown, activity manager. What you could do, that helps in managing the life cycle of the app. With its help, you can manage the life cycle of the app and provides a common navigation backstack. Means एक एक्टिविटी से दूसरी एक्टिविटी पे आना. एक एक्टिविटी is here is basically like in case of email, you create a mail, you send a mail, you open an email, all such things are activities. So from jumping from one activity to another activity, this activity manager helps you, because when you are accessing different activities in an app, so one activity is linked with another activity, so you need a stack mapping there. So next is content providers. So content provider is one of the important functionality. So what it does, it enables apps to access data from other apps. Means generally when we will see the security architecture of this Android platform, you will be seeing that this Android OS employs sandboxing. Means each and every app runs in isolation, but sometimes we need to exchange data from different apps. So that could be done with the help of this content provider. So these are Java API, important Java API framework that are available to you, and that will be helpful for you in designing the application. Now next is system app layer. So at this layer, you will be provided with all the apps in your system. Some of the apps come as a default with your mobile phones, and some of them you install from your different platforms. Like one of the platform could be Google Play Store or some another third party stores. From all such platforms you could install these kinds of apps. Now next, jumping to the security architecture of the Android. So in the security architecture of the Android, what we are covering is, we are covering security features provided by the Android OS regarding application isolation. So this we are covering, and the concept of permissions and least privilege. So that is also very important concept. So these two concepts we are covering here. So first is security architecture. As I've already told you when I was discussing with you the Java API layer, I told you that each and every you can say application runs in isolation. So that is named as application isolation or application sandboxing. So what happens is, in application sandboxing, whenever you try to execute an app, it creates a user ID, or you can say Android platforms create a user ID for that kind of app, and that kind of app is basically isolated from other apps, and it tries to run through system calls and kernels to the Android system, or using native code, C or C++ libraries. So this is the application sandboxing. So application sandboxing, basically it governs an application access to right to the system resources. It helps in governing the resources. How? In Android, each application is, as I already told you, is isolated in its own environment. So Android application can access only its own resources. So an application need proper access right to access other sensitive resource. So how a different app is protected from the current executing app because you need a special proper access right to access other sensitive resources. So in Android, access rights are provided by permissions. So you have already used your Android mobile phones, and whenever you try to install an app, you are always wait a minute. Let me drink some water. You are always sorry. So you are always basically asked about the permissions that need to be given to your application in order for those application to function. So those kind of permissions basically are standalone permissions for certain kind of apps which are in execution. So when you're granting a particular permission, let's say you're granting a permission to access your internet, to access, to read your contacts, all such permissions. Whenever you grant those kinds of permission, those kind of permission are only granted toward to that particular app only. They are not meant for other apps in the system. So that is basically application sandboxing. So each of the app is isolated and each of the app is provided with a user ID. So that permission basically is associated with that user ID so that the app with particular user ID could access that kind of permission only. So this is the application sandboxing or application isolation. Now next is security architecture with permission. As I've already told you, one of the thing is application sandboxing ki none of the app can access the other app resources, but other security feature is provided by permission also. So there are various kind of popular permissions like calendar, contacts, camera, location, microphone, sensors, phone, SMS, all such kind of permissions are being asked by the different utilities that you install on your Android mobile platform. And to access other resources which do not belong to an application, the access to such kind of, for example, let us suppose I install a media app. So this media app means which is used to play some songs or videos. So that application may be demanding to access the gallery from me. So such kind of apps cannot function until and unless we try to provide some permission. So it is up to us when a particular Android application is demanding us permission while installing. So we could analyze key if this granting this such and such kind of permission could be risky to us or not. So depending upon that decision, you could yourself govern the security of your phone. So after reading all these, or you can say discussing all these architectures, one is security architecture and one is general architecture. Now we will basically highlight the vulnerabilities in the architecture, whether it will be architectural vulnerability, whether it will be a software vulnerability, or whether it will be a you can say hardware, software, or architecture vulnerability. These are three kind of vulnerabilities that we will focus on. So first we are focusing on the security architecture vulnerability. So what is the issue here? As I've already told, there is application sandboxing, and every malicious app runs in its own isolation. So let us suppose there are two apps, malicious app A and malicious app B, and to malicious app A we have granted internet permission, and to malicious app B we have granted contact permission. So now now think of both the apps as malicious in nature, but in a standalone sandbox environment, they are not posing any threat right now because we have granted internet, but we have not granted access of context to app A to access our context and to pass on to an attacker. And similarly, for the app B, we have granted to read the content, but we have not granted this app the internet permission. So it could not also pass the important context to us. So, but and you also know that from application unboxing, each of the app is being provided with a UID. But what is the problem here? If both of the apps are developed by the same developer, so they are having the same certificate with them, and when they are having the same certificate with them, so what could happen is they will be provided with the same UID, because this is how the Android OS functions. if more than one apps are executing and those apps are being developed by the same developer, then they are having the same certificate and they will be provided with the same UID. Now they are not in isolation; they are in the close proximity, so they could use each other's permission. Like malicious app could borrow the permission from malicious app B, which is a permission of contact, and malicious app B could borrow the internet permission, and both of these could work in conjunction to pass on your important contacts, which are termed as protected resource by you, to some external attacker. So this is architecture vulnerability in Android OS. Now next is software vulnerability. So regarding software vulnerabilities, so these are the vulnerabilities which are introduced in the system during the implementation of the OS. How? Because whenever a mobile vendor is developing its device, so what it does, it tries to customize the Android OS. So it customizes its own kernel. It developed a new version of the kernel, which is a customized version of the kernel. And apart from developing a new customized version of the Android kernel, that vendor may also install some default apps on the device, which are known as system apps, and it may also give you some free apps, which may be some third-party apps. So these such kind of customized operating system and system apps and third-party app by the vendor could lead to a malicious attack. Now next is media projection. So it is a feature which is introduced by an API in all the Android versions of 5.0 and above. The API doesn't ask for user permission to record audio or capture screen of other apps. So this is threatening here. So means with this API you could record and capture the screen of the other apps. So your important financial, WhatsApp, and all such kind of social media mining apps all are under threat due to this you can say vulnerability. Now next is confused deputy attack. So in confused deputy attack, what happens? A malicious app can fool a privileged app to perform some task on behalf of the malicious app. Means a malicious app is fooling a privileged app. Privileged app is a app which is a legitimate app, but you have granted some privileges, some permissions, higher permissions to this kind of app, and so this malicious app is fooling this privileged attack to behave like a malicious app. So this is known as the confused deputy attack. So the confused deputy app, which is the privileged app, which is being fooled by the malicious app, can be system app developed by the device vendor or a third party app. So this is regarding software vulnerability. So next is hardware vulnerability. So apart from architecture and software vulnerabilities, there are other vulnerabilities known as hardware vulnerabilities. So what are these vulnerabilities? So these basically are vulnerabilities which are outcome of hardware flaw design or hardware design flaws. So recently there is a attack which is known as rampage attack, which is basically a DRAM based attack. So using this technique, an unprivileged Android app means the app to which you have not given any root privileges, it could attack your system. So all devices from the ice cream sandwich version, which is the version above 4.0 to now, means 10.0 is right here, or are susceptible to rampage attack. So all are in suspect that they could be attacked by this rampage attack. So rampage attack is a variation of raw hammer memory attack, which can take advantage of design flaw in modern memory systems. So these are the vulnerabilities. Now, after discussing all the vulnerabilities, all the threats, all the highlights, the malware definition, we have started. We have then jumped to categories of malware. Then we have seen the highlights of last 4 years. Then we have compared OS, Android OS with different OS, and we have seen why Android OS is a target. Then we have seen its architecture. Then we have seen its security architecture. Then we have seen the vulnerabilities in the architecture from the point of view of hardware, software, and as well as one was architectural vulnerability, all these such vulnerability. After seeing all such vulnerabilities, now we are capable enough to see what is malware analysis, how these threats could be eliminated. So one of the ways to eliminate a threat is to identify a threat. There are two things: prevention. One is prevention, and one is cure. So prevention is basically, before happening the attack, you are preventing it. So that could be done with the help of antiviruses. So there are antiviruses available to us. But what if we are being attacked? And what if we are being trying to attack, and we want to alarm us that something is happening? So that is basically comes in the realm of malware analysis. So someone has asked, is it possible to decrypt WhatsApp chat backup? If yes, how to overcome from same if backup delete is possible? Is it possible to recover the backup file from the WhatsApp chat backup? So yes, it is available if you log into your Google account, and if you have opted to backup your WhatsApp chat file, so that is already available on your Google page, your Google profile page. So from there you could access. You can search on Google that how to access the backup of WhatsApp chat. So you will log in your Google account, and you will log in with your WhatsApp account, and you will find the backup of the chat. So that is not a big issue. There is no need to decrypt it. So next is malware analysis in Android. So what all the chat logs are available there. I've seen there my chat log also. So that is not a big issue. There is no need of description there. So now I was discussing that we need to jump to malware analysis in Android, because ultimately we want to know that what is wrong to our system and where. So their analysis helps us. So what malware analysis does, it tries to find where the problem is, and if we have founded the problem, it means we can mitigate. So there in the theory of malware analysis, irrespective of what operating system you are using, it is generally of three types: static, dynamic, and hybrid. So there are three techniques available to do malware analysis, and in malware, in case of Android also, these three techniques are applicable. So let us see each and every technique one by one. So first technique is static technique. So what is static technique? Static technique is a technique in which we examine a program without executing any code. Means a standalone application is there. We are not executing it. Just we want to know whether it is malicious or not. So that is done with the help of static analysis. So how it is done? So it is done by you can say extracting some parameters from the apps, or you can say features from the app. More correctly, features from the app. So there are different you can say features listed, and according to the OS and the type of file, they vary. But since we are discussing Android here, so in context of Android, these are the popular features that could help us in uh, detecting whether a particular application is malicious or not. So what are these features? Permission feature, hardware feature, intent filter, API calls, opcodes, system commands, activities, then comes broadcast receiver, services, network addresses. So if you are able to extract these few of the feature or all of the feature, we could design analysis technique. I will give you an idea how to design it, but let me discuss further what are these features. So, and how to extract them. One of the important thing is to extract them. So generally, you know that when you are basically installing a file in Android, it is in the form of APK. It is APK extension. File is APK extension. Like in Windows, it is exe extension. File, you can say executable file. In case of Android OS is APK in extension. So there is a tool available to us, APK tool. This is a free and generic tool available as an open source. This what this tool does, it unpacks the APK. Like you use the RAR tool, WinRAR. So what it does, it unzips the zip file. Similarly, it unzips this APK tool, unzips the APK file. And when we unzip this APK file, there are a lot of folders in front of us. And what are these folders? One is resource folder, other is Android manifest folders, folder and other is smally folder. There are other small folders also, one or two small folder, but they are not of use to us. So one is resource folder. Resource folder is having all the resources in the form of images that our application is using. So generally that is also not usable in case of malware analysis. So what is usable? Only two folders are usable: Android manifest file folder and smally file folder. So what is Android manifest file folder and what is smally file folder? So in case of Android manifest file folder, you are having an XML file inside it. Only a single XML file is there in case of Android manifest file folder. So we are calling this file as Android manifest file. So what this file is having, some of the information that we are going to discuss. So half of the feature we can extract from this Android manifest file. The rest of the folder is in terms of smally files. So what are these smally files? When I was discussing uh, Android runtime with you people, then I told you that uh, the programming, Android programming is done in Java, and that Java code is being compiled into a bytecode equivalent, which is known as DEX file, and this DEX file is being compiled again to form the machine level language code and packed inside the APK. So this is the process. So when we extract the APK file from the APK tool, what happens is we get two types of the folders which are important in nature. One is Android manifest file, in which we are having an XML file. I've told you. Next is smally folder. Smally folder is consisting of assembly language equivalent of those text files. Means all the Java code that is being used to operate your app in the form of assembly language code is present on those smally files. So what we can say is, what we can conclude from here is, there are two types of features, generally broadly classified as two types of features, that we could extract from Android that you can say uh, APK file, static standalone APK file. One is Android manifest based feature, means XML based feature. Other is code based features. So let us discuss each and every feature one by one. So one of the feature is permission feature. So what is this permission feature? A permission feature is very common, as you have already seen. When you install an app, so what happens is you are being asked to grant certain permissions to the application, like to access camera, to access gallery, to access internet, to access 4G, to access Wi-Fi. These are the permissions that you encounter. So all such permissions that an app needs to function are defined in that Android manifest file. So that could be used by you and could be extracted. The XML files could be passed, and those set of permissions from a particular app could be extracted by you. So later on, you can do analysis that what kind of permission is dangerous and what kind of permission is not dangerous. So that you could also do. So next is hardware component. So hardware component is basically the type of hardware component which this Android application want to access. So these are the components which are also being defined in this XML file, which is known as Android manifest file. And combination of these hardware components could about the example, when you are having 3G and GPS access, then it could mean that your location could be passed to a remote attacker. So this is also an interesting component to extract from XML file by parsing it. Now next is intent-based filters. So what is intent-based filters? So every application has an intention. Intention, you know, the hidden motive behind the functioning of the application. So all such intentions are listed in this XML file, which is known as Android manifest file, and all such information is also available there. You could extract it. For example, an application intention could be to pick a contact, to take a photo, to dial a number. So these intent filters are being extracted to know what is the intention of the application. So next is activities. So activities, what is activity? Component defines an entry point. You can think of activity like you are using an mobile application of email. Then you could compose an email. Then you could send an email, there you could receive an email, there you could read an email. All such things are known as activities that you could perform on an application. So these activities are also listed in Android manifest file. So this could also give you what is the malicious behavior in those activities. Now next is broadcast receivers. So but what are broadcast receivers? These are the components that are defined that basically try to devise another entry point into the application, which enables the application to respond to system wide broadcast announcements even when the application is not running. For example, you have to set an alarm for an upcoming event. Low battery announcement means you are not setting it, you are receiving it. So these are broadcast receivers. So they are also entry point. So they could also be extracted from Android manifest files. And last from this Android manifest is services. So services is the component serves as a, so what are services? Because this component serves as a general purpose entry point to the application and is used for running background operations. Okay, like you are performing some, you're executing some application, and at the background you want music to play. So such kind of thing is known as service. So all such things could also be extracted from manifest file. Now comes the code-based features. Now code-based features, I have already told you, they are inside the Smalley files. So when you parse the Smalley files, you could retrieve these four kinds of features. What are these features? One is opcodes. So what are opcodes? They are the basically machine language equivalent of the machine language instruction. Means they refer to the Delvic instruction in the row form. They are similar to assembly instruction like move, add, subtract, like these kind of functions, or you can say opcodes, which are basically assembly language dependent, would be extracted from Smalley files. Now next is API calls. So what are API calls? The application programming interface calls or API calls are the set of code snippets that are used by the underlying system for communication. As we have already seen, there are default APIs that are developed by Java, and these APIs could be used by the application programmer to code it. So these are the codes to the code snippets which are already being developed and available to us. So next is system commands. So what are system commands? Sometimes we need to perform certain tasks and services which need to access system kernel. So these devices which need to access the system kernel, the APK use system commands or system routines to perform such thing. So such kind of information could also be extracted from code-based features from the API. Smalley files. Now next is network addresses. So what are network addresses? Network addresses, you can say network addresses are certain server addresses which application wants to connect in between to certain servers while executing. So they could also be dangerous because some of the network addresses could be addresses to the attacker servers. So if we are able to extract these features, then we could build a system to analyze that. But before discussing how to build the system, so we have some limitations of static analysis. So all these static methods are vulnerable to obfuscation. What is obfuscation? Encryption means all the code or all the features that we have seen could be encrypted, could be used. So since we are not executing the application, so we are not having the true meaning of those you can say features that are being obfuscated. Similarly, injection of non-Java code and network activity and the modification of object runtime are outside the scope of static analysis. Why non-Java code is not used? Because when we are expecting, we are only having the bytecode, so you can say assembly equivalent of the Java code. And for non-Java code, we are not performing any analysis. So that is a critical issue here. And also the attackers or the malicious apps which are downloading their malicious code at the runtime from the network are also not being covered in this realm of static analysis. Now, next different kind of analysis is dynamic analysis. So somebody is saying the session is very informative and fruitful. So Thank you for the praise. So let me finish the session. Um, next is uh, next is in contrast to dynamic analysis, what we need is uh, how dynamic analysis is done. It is done by executing the code. Means instead of a standalone application, we try to execute it, and when we try to execute it, we try to observe some features, or we can say parameters out of it. So basically, this analysis is of two types: in the box analysis and out the box analysis. So what is in the box analysis and out the box analysis? It depends on how you are executing your application. So one way is to execute inside the VM virtual machines, and other way is to execute in the real environment. So when you are executing in the real environment, then that is known as in the box analysis. And when you are executing in the VM based environment, then it, or some emulator, it is known as out of the box analysis. So these are the two kinds of analysis which are further types of dynamic analysis. And from these dynamic analysis, we could extract system calls, API call graph, network traffic, system components, user interaction, battery, memory, all such things. So I will discuss each and every of the feature one by one. So what is system call? So system call means a graph generated by system services. And similarly, API call graph is, earlier in case of static analysis, we were only listing what are the API calls being made. But here, how they are made and what is the flow of API call is basically depicted by a call graph. So that is basically a runtime behavior. Until unless you run and execute the code, you are not able to get the runtime behavior or API or system call graph. So next is network traffic analysis. So how network traffic analysis is done? So I have already told you, like, you might have encountered Wireshark with your PCs. So Wireshark is a popular software in terms of personal computers, which is used to track the network traffic. It could capture the network traffic, in and outgoing traffic of your system. So similarly, there are also Wireshark version of applications available for mobile devices. If you install those devices on your system, you could measure the network in and out traffic, and from there you could analyze something fishy is happening or not. What a system component, what kind of CPU is being used, such kind of system resources and their usage could be tracked. So they comes under system component. And other is battery and memory. So memory is here means is the live memory, or you can say RAM memory. So this memory is basically very important in analysis because everything is executed inside the RAM. Every function, whether it is malicious or non-malicious, get executed inside the RAM. So that is very important to analyze. So that is very tricky in case of Android because it is not directly you can access Android kernel. So that is a tricky part. Now comes the user interactions. So user behavior, basically they are related with user behavior. So user behavior is memory is also part of the system component, but I basically highlighted here because it is more it is basically I want to highlight it that its importance is more as compared to other system components like CPU and other things. So if I talk about user interactions, so user interactions are basically the user behaviors, because that is also a very important thing to analyze. At what frequency we are accessing, at what frequency we are accessing a device, at what pace we are expecting, what we are expecting, how we are expecting. So these are all such user patterns that could be useful for us in detecting whether a malicious activity is happening or not, because we can differentiate between a legitimate user and a unlegitimate user, non-legitimate user through user interactions. So these are the components, or you can say features, that could be used. So there are some limitations of dynamic analysis also. What are the limitations? As Android apps are highly interactive, many behaviors need to be triggered via the interface, received intents, or with smart automatic event injectors. So what I meant to say is key, you have to execute each and every functionality of an app. So you need smart injectors so that every event is invoked, so that you could record the performance. Now another degree of complexity is added as the malware is live and you are able to view and interact with this environment. So it may also harm your system. So that is the complexity available with dynamic analysis. Now, next type of analysis is hybrid analysis. So what is hybrid analysis? Hybrid analysis is basically combining static and dynamic analysis. Is means some of the features you are combining from static analysis, some of the features you are combining from dynamic analysis, and you are building a system. Then that kind of analysis is known as hybrid analysis. So, and there is a short, you can say, insight how you can build a model. If you know machine learning and data science, you know how to extract features. I have told you how the features could be extracted. Then you could apply feature selection. Then you could train your classification model, and then you could differentiate between a test, benign app, and malicious app. So with this, I will end my today's presentation. And APK tool is used to, sorry, one question is, APK tool is used to extract static features. Can you please name some tools to extract dynamic features? So, yes, dynamic features could be used. I have told you, T-packet capture is one of the application that could be installed on your mobile phones to capture network traffic. There are call graphs that could be created. I am not remembering the exact software. That is a Java-based software that helps to create a call graph, API call graph from a Java-based software. It is not clicking in my name. If it will click, I will tell you. So there is a software that could be used. So that will execute your code and will draw and will give you an output in the form of API call graph. And regarding memory, you have to tab into root access. That is very tricky in nature, and to gain the kernel access. So that is not easy. That could not be done by a specific tool, because each and every vendor has customized their own Android system. So you need to be technically more into Android to access such kind of system components or memory based components. So this is it. And if you want to pose any more question, you could. Otherwise, my presentation is ended here. So, okay, thank you. And
Thank you so much. If there are any questions, participants, please, you may ask in the chat box, or you may turn on your mic and you may ask on call. Okay, so I would like to thank you, sir, for taking your time out for this session. And the session was really good. You provided a very extensive overview regarding all the things that were covered in the presentation. Thank you so much for accepting our invitation to come into this session. Thank you.
And I would also thank you to give me this opportunity to interact with fellow colleagues here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. And thank you all the participants. We'll be starting our next session at 2:30 after the lunch break. And it will be delivered by Dr. Sanjay Batish. He'll be taking you to a virtual tour of data center as well. So I request all of you to be present at time. Thank you so much.